welcome back to the podcast. I don't know about you, but I love a good personality test. I honestly think it started back in middle school when I had 17 magazine and Cosmo. There was at least one personality or some type of test in there where you could learn a little more about yourself, and I would run to those. Those were just my very favorite. So, obviously, when I'm going to study in college, psychology, because I just love learning about people, why they do what they do, why their brains do what they do. It's no surprise that I am where I am in my life and the career that I am doing, the job that I have, and helping teens and helping parents. It all kind of comes together. So I thought it would be fun to do a whole podcast focused on specifically type A and type B personality types, and also talk about some of the challenges that can come with being specifically a type A parent. So I'm going to dive into that today. I'll start by explaining a little bit about type A and type B personality types. And then I'm going to share 5 challenges type A parents face when raising a teenager. I'm also going to talk about what to do if there's a personality mismatch, specifically your type A and your teen is type B. And then I'm going to wrap things up by sharing ways that you can be more laid back or more type B as a parent. So let me just start by talking a little bit about type A and type B personality types. I'm going to give you the guidelines for each one, and also know that there is a spectrum. That's the way I see it. So I want you to listen to this list and discern for yourself, is this me? Is this not me? Might I be a little bit of both? And there are countless different quizzes that you can take online as well if you really love to take a quiz. I know I did. Of course, I got different answers for both, and I'll get to that in a minute, but let me dive in. So type A. Type A people are typically really ambitious, hardworking. They can be very determined, also aggressive, lacking patience, and they can often be workaholics. So type A people will take on multiple tasks and extra responsibilities to succeed. I like to think of type A people as being the grocery bag carrier, meaning they're not going to ask other people to carry all of the 10 grocery bags out of their car. They're in charge of all of their grocery bags, and they will make it all in one trip. I don't know if you're laughing along with me because that's me. They're also very goal-oriented at work, and they are fast-paced, like they're in a race for time. Here are just a few general type A traits: aggressive, focused on achievement, hardworking, confident, easily irritated or intolerant, determined, unfriendly, good at multitasking, competitive, impatient, highly driven, and energetic. So if you're hearing that and you're like, oh, you know what, that's me, take it, the good, the bad, the ugly, all the in between. That's generally speaking a type A personality. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about type B. Basically, type B is the opposite of type A. They're easygoing, laid back, they work toward goals, but they don't have a serious sense of urgency through it. They don't usually feel the need to prove their abilities or show that they're better than other people. They're not as competitive or easily frustrated, and generally pretty friendly and easygoing. The traits are peaceful, relaxed, easygoing, less prone to stress, lack a sense of urgency, lack of conflict with others, even-tempered, flexible, and adaptable, less competitive, and slower paced. I took a class, like I said, I studied psychology in college, psychology and social behavior, and one of our classes that we took was called Human Stress. And here's where I learned in this class about type A and type B personality types. And the way that the professor taught it to us was he had people raise their hand if they thought they were type A. And then he called on somebody who had raised their hand. He called on her to come up. And then he started asking her questions about herself and just general questions. And then he stopped the interview. And instead of talking about her answers, he pointed out how when he would start the question, she would start her answer before he finished the question. Like she would jump right into the answer right in the middle of it. So that's like the sense of urgency, the lack of patience coming out. And of course, it segued into him explaining the different personality types. And speaking from personal experience, I have to say, typically growing up, I felt like I was a pretty type B person. And then that kind of changed. I became a type A person. I feel like after I had kids, I might have been transitioning into a type A person before I had kids, but there was definitely kind of a switch that flipped around the time that I had my kids. And I started to become more and more type A as they were growing and when they were toddlers and things like that. But I still thought that I was a type B person. So I was living as a type A person thinking I was type B. I don't know if that's the worst possible combination or what, but it wasn't until my therapist pointed out the behaviors that I had that I recognized my type A tendencies and the way that they were impacting my life. So now, like when I took the quiz, I told you I would mention, I took one quiz and it said I was type B, and then I took another quiz and it said I was leaning toward type A. I don't know. I think I'm a little bit of both, and I'm sure you are too. So when you're hearing the things that I'm talking about, you may really be like, oh, that's 100% me. You might be like, oh, that's a little bit me. That's a little bit not me. Doesn't really matter. But what I'm going to be talking about here is how if you lean toward type A, whether you're full blown type A or just have the type A tendencies, that can present unique and specific challenges as a parent. So I'm going to be talking about that a little bit today. Studies have shown that type A personalities typically are high achievers, but not necessarily, because type B personalities can also be high achievers. And it's also known that both types have traits that can lead to achievement. So I know as a type A person, sometimes type A people may think that they're better than type B because they are higher achieving, but know that neither personality trait is better or worse than the other. It's just a matter of looking at your personality traits and deciding, is this impacting my life in a positive way, a beneficial way, or in a negative way? And reflecting back and deciding, is there something I want to do about this? Is this something I want to change? Yes or no? So, like I said, both personality traits have some type of path to achievement in different ways. But as expected, type A is more prone to burnout than type B because type B is more adaptive and tolerant than type A. But mental stress in general can impact both. What I'm going to talk about now is some of the challenges specifically that type A parents face. And like I mentioned, I'm talking about type A because their tendency to rely on organization, their competitive nature, and dislike of wasted time can really make parenting challenging. So one of the challenges that the type A parent might face is that they push their kids too hard. Whether it's either piling on unnecessary responsibilities or demands, or criticizing their teen, thinking they're not doing enough. As a hard worker yourself, it can be really triggering to see them wasting time, quote unquote, wasting time. So there is obviously some doubt and some fear that's going to come to that, and frustration too, because they may not be doing what you think they should be doing, or they may not be achieving at the level you want them to. So you push them and you think you're being helpful, but it can backfire and create tension in the relationship. Another negative side effect is that because you are running on the it's never good enough, it needs to be better, work hard, work hard, work hard mentality that comes from that inner voice that says, not good enough, you're not good enough in all of its various forms, that rubs off on your teen. So your internal dialogue is, I'm not good enough. And then it spreads to them, they're not good enough. And then they internalize, mom and dad don't think I'm good enough. I guess I'm not good enough. So it's basically just generationally handing down that notion, you're not good enough, spreading it down. So as it comes to pushing your kids too hard, It's constantly trying to get them to do more and be more, but not to the betterment of their life. It's more to fulfill the need that you have to feel satisfied with what they are doing, with their achievement level, and also how that reflects upon you. So you have standards for them, you want what's best for them, but it also, I mean, let's be honest, it can be very satisfying as a parent to see your kid achieving. But if you're pushing them too hard along the way, leading them to burnout, undue stress, or to do things that really aren't important to them, or really impact the quality of their life, taking them down a path of achievement that they never really wanted, it's going to create a divide in your relationship. It's also going to impact their confidence in a negative way. So you feel like you're pushing them because you want them to be more confident, but what ends up happening is they end up losing confidence because it's never good enough. So keep that in check as a type A person, working hard, being, constantly doing, and recognizing if it's having a negative impact on your teen or on your relationship with your teen. Another thing that can be challenging is that your emotions get the best of you. So obviously, as a type A person, in general, type A's carry around a higher level of stress. So they're going to be more easily triggered by things, whether it's their teen's behavior, lack of performance, disorganization can really impact the level of stress and trigger you to another higher experience of stress and responding in kind. So your higher level of stress, you may be more reactive, getting more frustrated, angry, lashing out, and that's all due to your need to feel like things are in control. And so when they're feeling chaotic, you're going to respond. It's a stress response. And you may be more reactive and more critical. Another challenge is the need to micromanage. Type A people want to be in control. Bottom line. And so in an effort to control something that you can't control, your teen, you may jump in a little too much. You may say a little too much. You may take over too often, thinking that it's going to be better. So everything from how they brush their teeth to how they unload the dishwasher, it's all under scrutiny. So either you're telling them over and over how to do things, or you just take over and do it yourself, basically robbing them of the experience. So notice your tendency to micromanage. What's really important? When is it really important to step in? And when can you really step back? Another challenge number 4, is expecting too much from your teen. This becomes a big thing when your teenager is now in their big kid body, older teen / almost adult body. They look grown up, but their brain's not quite there yet. So you see them in their adultish looking body thinking they should be able to be basically an adult. They should be able to do all these adult things. Look at them, they're so grown up, but at the same time, their brain is still catching up to their body. So the expectations can be really skewed for what they can and can't do. And this is also where type A perfectionism comes in. And I'm not talking about high standards. I'm talking about perfectionism as in it's never good enough, or unless it's perfect, it's wrong or bad. That is basically a fear of failure. It puts undue stress on everyone. So basically what I mentioned before, you're sending the message you're not good enough because your measure of their worth is by looking at their output. That's where your expectations can really get in the way. So keeping your type A expectations in check when it comes to looking at your teen and what they can and what they can't do, or what they want to do and don't want to do. And number 5 on the list of challenges, you have higher levels of stress. This is basically a blanket for everything I mentioned. Your level of stress is impacting your quality of life and your relationship with your teen. So really, you're hard on yourself. Type A's are typically very hard on themselves, and they're also hard on their teen. So when the results are less than what you would hope for, you may feel some shame or you may feel some guilt. It's a lot of heaviness to carry. So let me talk a little bit about what to do if there's a mismatch, meaning you're a type A parent and you have a type B teen. There are benefits. You may really admire that your teen is more laid back, doesn't seem stressed about things, but it also might drive you crazy. So here are a few tips to help you if you're struggling to parent a type B teen. Number one is to focus on the big picture. So they may not complete things in a way that you would have or in a way that you wanted them to in your timeline, but did they complete them? Look at their overall behavior versus focusing on one specific particular thing. So are they struggling to complete work in math? How are the rest of their classes going? Or is their room a mess? Are they keeping track of their things? Look at the big picture and evaluate before diving in and micromanaging or telling them how to do things. Just pause and reflect on the big picture first. And the second thing you can do is to manage your stress. I say this all the time, but your anxiety will rub off on those around you. So if you're always stressed out, your teen's going to feel it and maybe even take on some of that stress themselves. So if you're constantly anxious or worrying about the future, your teen is going to worry too. They're also going to sense that you don't trust in their ability to figure things out. And so their confidence will take a hit. So do what you can to keep your stress in line. And better yet, let your teen's laid back attitude rub off on you a little bit. Another really great strategy is to let someone else take the reins. This is something that comes up with a lot of the parents I work with, where one is more of a type A, or where the teen responds better to someone else. So let someone else, whether it's a co-parent, an expert, a teacher, a coach, finding someone who can help your teen in a way that feels supportive can go a long way for them, for your teen, but also for you, because it releases the burden off of you. And type A's, I know, we take on all the things, but maybe it's not up to you to solve all of the problems. Maybe you don't have to figure it out all on your own. So if you sense that your approach is creating tension in your relationship with your teen, there might be someone else who can reach them more effectively. And always, always have some grace and compassion for yourself and for your teen. And know that this is a lifelong relationship. Just take it one step at a time and just course correct as you go. Now, lastly, I want to wrap up with how to be more of a type B parent, how to be more laid back as a parent. The first step is to let go. Learn to go with the flow. Anytime you feel like you're pushing really hard or trying to control, you're going to feel more stressed. And I say this all of the time on the podcast, but you can't control your teen. So when you stop swimming upstream and you just allow yourself to float downriver, you're going to cover more ground quickly. And maybe not in the direction you had hoped you'd travel, but in a direction that feels more relaxing and calm. And another thing to do is just create opportunities for your teen. Let them make their own decision. Support them along the way. And let me clarify that being laid back doesn't mean backing off. It means you trust them and set the stage for them to come to you with anything. You allow for grace in your relationship, and your love is not conditional to their performance. And what it does mean is that you are a safe space for them to go to in good times and in tough times. And as with most things in life, it all starts with you. Your growth, self-reflection, self-compassion, and your willingness to do uncomfortable things like letting go of control is going to do wonders for your relationship with your teen. So start where you are without judgment and know that you're doing your best and recognize that you'd like to do even better. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.